I set out on a narrow way many years ago, hoping I would find true love along the broken road. But I got lost a time or two, wiped my brow and kept pushing through. I couldn't see how every sign pointed straight to you. That every long lost dream led me to where you are. Others who broke my heart, they were like northern stars, pointing me on my way into your loving arms. This much I know is true, that God bless the broken road that led me straight to you. Yes, it did. I think about the years I spent just passing through. I'd like to have the time I lost and give it back to you. But you just smile and take my hand. You've been there, you understand. It's all part of a grander plan that is coming true. Every long lost dream led me to where you are. Others who broke my heart, they were like northern stars, pointing me on my way into your loving arms. This much I know is true, that God bless the broken road that led me straight to you. Rolling home into my lover's arms. This much I know is true, that God bless the broken road that led me straight to you. That God bless the broken road that led me straight to you.
Lady, when you're with me, I'm smiling. Give me, whoa, 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 your love. Your hands build me up when I'm sinking. Touch me, and my troubles are fade. Lady, from the moment I saw you standing, whoa, 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 alone, you gave all the love that I needed. So shy, like a child who had grown.
into your head that you just can't no more. You just can't no more. When there's nothing left to give and you wanna call it quits, no longer strong enough to pick yourself up off the floor. Up off the floor. Hold on, my friend, 'cause there'll be better days coming. Don't give up. The hands that are holding tomorrow are still holding on to us. Better days coming. Watch and see. We'll dance through the pain and the sorrow, knowing there's gonna be better days. So don't you get too comfortable where you live and ain't your home. Soon the promise gonna come. I know it won't be long. It won't be long. Hope is tearing through the night. Shadows running from the light. Love's awakening inside just like a brand new song. Like a brand new song. Better days coming. Don't give up. The hands that are holding tomorrow There's a message on my phone. It's my mother saying, darling, please come home. I fear the worst. How could you leave us all behind? There's so much to say, but there's so little time. So how do I say goodbye? Someone who's been with me for my whole damn life. You gave me my name and the color of your eyes. See your face when I look at mine. So how do I say goodbye? And I couldn't. You always saw the best in me. Right or wrong, you were always on my side. But I'm scared of what life without you's like. And I saw the way she looked into your eyes. And I promise if you go, I will make sure she's alright. So how do I say goodbye? Someone who's been with me for my whole damn life. You gave me my name and the color of your eyes. See your face when I look at mine. So how do I say goodbye? And there's no way you could ever let me down. Gonna steal some time and start again. Always be my closest friend. And someday we're gonna make it out. Just hold the light. Just hold the light high, high. So how do I say goodbye? Someone who's been with me for my whole damn life. You gave me my name and the color of your eyes. I see your face when I look at mine. So how do I say goodbye? So how do I say goodbye?
It's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through. That I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side. And now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
It's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
First you both go out your way and the vibe is feeling strong. And what's small turn to a friendship turn to a bond. And that bond will never be broken, the love will never get lost. And when brotherhood come first, then the line will never be crossed. Established it on our own when that line had to be drawn. And that line is what we reach, so remember me when I'm gone. How can we
Hello, welcome. If you all could just, if you have a seat, find it, and the family will come in and be seated, and then we will get started. Let's see if we've got Becky and Lois. Oh, come on in. There we go. On behalf of the family, I want to welcome all of you and thank you so very much for being here to remember John. John Art was an exceptionally special guy, which makes this very difficult for me today. But thank you for being here so that we can remember him and celebrate him. And I have a special request as we do this, that when we get to the point where we have an open mic for you to come and share. I know it's hard. I know no one loves standing up here. But as a gift from John, some of those memories, even if it's just a moment or a few words, please spend the time between now and then just digging deep and seeing if there's something that you can share in this space. On behalf of John, I'd like to say, why are you here? Why are you making a big deal about me? Because one thing we know is this is not his kind of crowd. So, today, in keeping with who he was and what he liked, today is not a funeral or a memorial so much as the family said today is John's home run. So this is our retelling. This is us getting together and looking at a game well played. So, dig deep. Remember your favorite moments, the highlights of the life that you got to witness. Let's share it. He would hate it. I can feel it. He would hate it. So once again, do your best to hold it together, and I will do the best on my side. And remember, it's not a funeral. It's not the memorial. It's the home run. This is a sad time, though, and I recognize that. We're not going to diminish what we've lost because this was fast, and I know it caught all of us off guard. I don't want to disregard the pain of losing someone as special as John and calling it something like this or treating it like this, but it was who he was, and there's so much to remember, and there's so much to share, and he was such a great and quiet guy that we need to raise his flag for him today. So this is that space when the team hangs out after a game and we remember what special moments that player had. We relive it, we retell it, and we do it for him. Please share his finest moments. Remember them, and let's celebrate him together. We'll take a few breaks throughout today. There'll be some songs. Reflect in those times who he was to you and the meaning of the songs in those moments. And again, please consider what you might share. Father, help us today. Help us to do him proud. Help us to have the strength to remember as he deserves to be remembered. Thank you for the gift of a life, of a gentle giant, of a strong man who had touched so many people. Be with the family and the close friends who he treated like family, and the coworkers, no matter how we knew him, how we lived our life with him. Just please bring comfort in this time. Thank you. Amen. The family requested this first song, and many of us will know it well. Some might not have ever heard it before, but please
just in this time, let's just take a quick moment, pause, reflect on what it's saying, and think again of a moment of John that you might share. So please, I can only imagine.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever worship you. I can only imagine, yeah. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever worship you. I can only imagine.
So as we remember him, we first invite up the family to share some thoughts and some of his life and with us. And Wendy, Linda? Okay.
Thank you. I'm the crier of the family, so I'm holding it together, guys. Johnny was born, I'm Linda. Johnny was born just a few days before my 9th birthday. And I always said he was my best birthday present I ever had. And I kept saying that every year. Oh, I got a new baby doll. Well, Johnny was my best birthday present I ever had. And he caught on to that, and he entered teen years and adulthood. And then I heard it every year. Happy birthday, Linda. I'm the best birthday present you ever had. So, it's true. He still was the best birthday present I ever had. His great brother. I moved away when he was only 11, and so most of my really, really big cherished memories are in his first 11 years. And I was his second mama, and fed him and diapered him, and I didn't play baby dolls anymore. I had him, you know. And then I got a girl after that the next year. I'm like, thanks, Mom, now I got a full set. But that's probably my most precious thing. I'm going to keep it short. My most precious thing is that he was my birthday present. Best brother in the world. Of course, I don't have much to compare him to. I only have one brother. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Oh. You want this to come around?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel so famous. I'm Wendy, Bob. Sorry, Bob. I'm not so good at this up here. But I'm John's second oldest sister, and I'm going to talk about John's precious gift giving. As our family grew, we all decided it was time to start drawing names at Christmas. I crossed my fingers. Pick me, pick me, pick me. John really didn't want to draw my name. He said I was too picky, I asked for too many presents, and I have expensive taste. So guess what? John drew first. He drew my name. Yay! It was supposed to enhance his chances of not drawing my name, but he did draw my name. Boy, was I excited. So I created a wish list. First, I asked for a foot spa because I stand all day. I try my hardest to make people look really, really pretty, but my feet get kind of sore. So he was very kind. And so he gave me a bucket, which he didn't know I needed a bucket for my cleaning supplies, but thank you, John. He always kind of knew what each person needed. So then it came with instructions. Because I wanted hot water. It's fine. No, it's fine. It's exactly the way I want it. Thank you. So I wanted hot water, so he gave me a tea kettle, and I collect roosters, and I love roosters and chickens. I know it's hard to explain, but whatever. So he gave me a tea kettle for my hot water, and then I said I wanted some bubbles. So he gave me some bubbles, and I said, well, what am I supposed to do with that? And he said, well, you just put this in your spot and you just blow. All right, so then we'll move on to the next Christmas that John didn't want to draw my name. And so I made him a new list. And on that new list, I thought, this is pretty great. He did give me a real foot spa, whatever. And so the next time I thought, I've been waiting for like 10 years, looking for an iron headboard. So he was like, I got you, sis. And I said, all right. So I said, I would like a queen size. Iron. Head. Board. So I got myself an queen size iron headboard, and it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And no, he did not buy me the queen size iron headboard for Christmas. He got me a ficus tree. This is why Jeanne, my favorite name for him, was the best gift giver. He always made me laugh, super happy tears. He was the best gift. He was the best gift that we could ever have. And that best gift he gave to each of us was of himself, and he was my sweet baby brother, Johnny.
Thank you. We'll sort all of this out here.
Yeah.
Becky?
That's a hard act to follow. I'm not going to look at anyone while I read this, so I can maybe make it through. About 26 years ago, I met John. Well, let me back up a little. In about June of 1995, I was a camp counselor with Vicki Bingham, where she told me about this young man I should meet named John. My friend Dawn was in agreement. I was not interested. In the summer of that same year, I moved to Tucson and met Lois, John's mom. For about a year, we were church friends and we went to the same Bible study. She never once mentioned she had a single son my age. She later said that she knew we'd meet when the time was right, but that she also knew that I'd be her daughter-in-law eventually. Fast forward to about July of 1996, to the day John walked into church. I elbowed my friend Dawn asking, "Who's that?" She was like, "That's John." I was hooked, and from that day on, I was, shall we say, interested. It took John a lot of convincing from friends to ask me out on that first date. He was even given a deadline. True story. He asked me out to his company Christmas party in Phoenix at the Biltmore. It was a fancy date, and he even wore a suit. I think that's probably one of the few times I've seen him in one. The other 2 times that I remember were our wedding and Steve and Aaron's wedding. I was so nervous because I really liked this guy, and I still wasn't sure how he felt about me. After that night, I was convinced we'd be together forever. I have so many John stories I could tell you, but each one of you have some as well. My favorite stories to tell on him were when he was sleepwalking, for lack of a better term. Once, when Sierra was a newborn, he told me he had a dream that she was in bed with us and she fell between the bed and the wall. He said he woke up to flipping the mattress up and off the box springs looking for her. She and I had actually been in her nursery sleeping. I asked him, what would have happened if I had been in bed? He just replied, well, I guess you would have ended up on the floor. John's obsessions ran deep. As you can tell, the University of Arizona was one of them. He loved the cats, especially the heart attack cats. Jeff Foxworthy was another. However, I think it was because I could relate on a personal level to his redneck jokes. Another love was movies. His all-time favorite was Dumb and Dumber. I think it was really because it bonded him and his friend Lee on a whole new level. Yeah. Recently, he loved watching the two guys on a dock telling dad jokes. He would watch the video, then have to replay it for me, even though I had heard it when he watched it the first time. He loved making me laugh. I think his family was by far his biggest obsession. John was the strong, silent type. He was my best friend, my counselor, my love. He taught me a lot about finances, family, and trust. Together, we built a life. John would have hated being the center of attention, but here we are, celebrating John. I thank you all for being here today to honor John and supporting us, his family.
As evidence of Becky's love, she's wearing the U of A, but you'll notice underneath is the ASU. In lieu of speaking, Lois has asked that we play another song and to let it speak for her. So this is Scars in Heaven.
If I had only known the last time would be the last time, I would have put off all the things I had to do. I would have stayed a little longer, held on a little tighter. Now what I'd give for one more day with you. 'Cause there's a wound here in my heart where something's missing, and they tell me that it's gonna heal with time. But I know you're in a place where all your wounds have been erased, and knowing yours are healed is healing mine. The only scars in heaven that won't belong to me and you. There'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will be made new. And the thought that makes me smile now, even as the tears fall down, is that the only scars in heaven are on the hands that hold you now. I know the road you walked was anything but easy. You picked up your share of scars along the way. Oh, but now you're standing in the sun. You fought your fight and your race is run. The pain is all a million miles away. The only scars in heaven that won't belong to me and you. They'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will be made new, and the thought that makes me smile now, even as the tears fall down, is that the only scars in heaven, yeah, are on the hands that hold you now. That hold you now. There's not a day goes by that I don't see you. You live on in all the better parts of me, until I'm standing with you in the sun. I'll fight this fight in this race I'll run, until I finally see what you can see. Oh, the only scars in heaven, they won't belong to me and you. There'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will be made new, and the thought that makes me smile now, and even as the tears fall down, that the only scars in heaven are on the hands that hold you now.
And now I want to invite up Lee. Yeah. Lee Weisner.
High school, 1988. I was standing next to my locker waiting for my first class to start, and this guy comes by me and he says, "Hey Lee, how's it going?" We probably had a few brief words exchanged between us, and then he went off down the hall, and I'm pretty sure he thought to himself, that guy does not have a clue who I am. My friend standing next to me asked, "Who was that?" And I probably had the blankest look on my face, and I was like, I have no idea who that guy is. John Ahrendt, he never forgets a face, and for that matter, never forgets how he knows you, the details that also go along with it. Anytime I went with John at a game, or at a restaurant, or at movies, he always seems to know somebody. And it doesn't matter if it's from high school, or grade school, or day-to-day life. He'll go up to that person, and he'll tell you that he knows you. And I have seen that look, because it's myself that, who is this guy, and how does he know me? It never fails. He always seems to know somebody. Since that day, our friendship has grown for 4 years of knowing each other and becoming one of my true friends. There's not too many people that I could say that who I've known that long and see my shortcomings and still choose to be my friend. There's so many things I could share about John. Many of those war stories of the times that we had together that could probably occupy days, if not weeks worth. I think the one thing that stands out that Becky alluded to was Dumb and Dumber. I'm pretty sure me and John could recite that whole movie from beginning to end, probably make it a 2-man Broadway show. I'm sure our wives do not appreciate the movie like we do. As well as another fond memory is we properly do not connect a jumper cable to my truck at the time. That was quite the spectacle of sparks that came off of that. I kind of blame him because, you know, his dad was a mechanic. He should have known how to do it correctly. So I'll put that one on him. But I wanted to share 2 things of how I really view John, and I hope I give him the honor that he deserves. One of those areas is sports, and if anyone knows John, he loves sports. And I believe he played it better than anyone I've ever known, no matter what sport. There was never a sport that he could not play, whether it be golf, basketball, baseball, or racquetball. I think bowling is about the one thing I could probably hold my own against with him, and that's a big maybe. But when it came to basketball, of the two sports, I think he excelled at. He was really well played in that sport. It never fazed him when people come at him hard or, started being aggressive. I never see him lose his cool. He'd just channel it and take his A game to another level. And I'm just thinking to myself, if he just stopped ticking him off, you probably might have a chance of winning, but he just took it to the next level. And he always played to my strength and overshadowed the weaknesses that I had whenever we played together. And then there's baseball. And I remember that one day he came up to me and he showed me a clip from a paper that his name was in it, and it was the headline about him winning a baseball game. And I don't believe he was a pitcher. I think he played another position. But I think the coach saw something in him as far as being able to pitch, and he put him in the game. And I believe he pitched a 3-hitter or 5-hitter, and it was a playoff game. And he was impressed with himself, and I was more impressed because, you're in the paper. I think he undersold his sports abilities. I think he could have taken it to another level, but he seemed to keep himself in check and how good he was. And I would have given anything to have half the talent that he had in sports. And besides his love of sports, John's personal life was another area that stood out to me. Over the years, our lives went down different roads: work, moving around, and relationships. I spent 4 years out of Arizona, and our interactions became a little bit, less interactive. But since moving back to Arizona, I know there was a difference. Something that seemed a little bit more purpose in his life and a sense of who he was, if that makes any sense. Even as a person, I was more relaxed, humorous, and then realized, what is it? And I think it was a testament to Becky, I think his wife, the better half. Something about being married and finding someone to complement your other side that makes the difference in our lives. It's a different type of friend that comes from the spouse. You can only find those hidden gems that they pull out in you. It was good to see him in that way. And from that came his 2 daughters. And that brought in a whole new side of John, being a dad. And it's interesting to see him over those years that I've known him, the evolution of who he became. And I remember when our interactions become less, hanging out and doing stuff that we want to do, but just hanging together and talking about family. And I told him, I was like, John, you're outnumbered in your house. You will always have a spare bathroom at our house. 34 plus years I've known John. I'll never say I knew John, but I still know John. Right now, there's just our pause and our time together, and we'll each see each other later, as I told him. Someone shared with me that when the time comes, we'll be fortunate to be able to count on one hand the true friends we had. For myself, I felt like I lost the anchor to the one in my hand. For John, it seems apparent that he had several hands of his truest friends here. I'd just like to close this about him. My wife shared this with me. Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all about the love you want to give, but cannot. All that unspent love gathers in the corner of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love or no place to go.
At this point, I want to open it up to anyone to come and share a John story. I don't know how long we have, but we can take the time. So who's first? Okay.
looking at Becky. I can't look at you. I can look at Lois. I just want to say that John was a big part of my life, and that Becky introduced us. He was my son in love, not my son-in-law. And when we would write on a card to one another, he would put, "To my mother-in-law." So we had a really, really good relationship. And there was one extremely hard time in my life. It was a wonderful time also. And you know, when you have these magnificent times and horrible times at the same time, you don't know what to do. So Lois and I had spent the night at the hospital with Becky in childbirth to Sierra. And we spent the whole night there with them. You know, you got to be there for your kids. And it, of course, was like any other birth. It was a miracle. And in the morning, after John had gone to, or after Becky was back in her room, and John had been with Sierra in the, what you call it? Thank you, nursery. It's been a while for me. And so when we all got together again in Becky's room, John said, "You want to go to breakfast?" To me, to the cafeteria. So we did that. And it was just a really nice time. Any time with John was a nice time. And when we got back to the room, I could tell Becky had been crying. And there was a lady there with her, kind of rubbing her back, like she was consoling her. And Becky said, I named her after my two sisters, by the way, Rebecca and Kay. And Becky said, Aunt Becca called. And my husband's name was Bob. And I told Becky, Bob died, didn't he? And he had, thank you, and he had, Bob, my Bob had died, not Wendy's. And so, you know, we all cried together for a little bit. And then John said, you can't drive home. And so Becky and him got together and decided John would be my chauffeur. So John put his arm around me and walked me out to his car, or truck, I can't remember, probably a truck. And I never once felt my feet hit the floor. That was the strength John would give a person. And I know that a lot of people here have felt that. And his love would just, and I'm not just being sappy, I mean, I really love the guy, but he would fill the room with his presence. He was just a wonder. And now we all wonder how we're going to get through it, but you know what? We will, because we know where he is.
Good afternoon. My name is Travis, and John is my friend. And I will see my friend again someday in a place where there is no pain, no suffering. I met John in '96. I came to work for a company called Copper State Communications, and I call it a company, but really it was a family. And I learned over years and years of working with John what that really meant to have a work family. I'd spend days and days with John working at client sites, behind the windshield, laughing, telling jokes. When he and Becky got married, when his daughters Sierra and Jenna were born, and the joy that it brought him to be able to talk about his family and the joy he had at home, and the opportunity we had to just share our lives as friends. One of the stories we told each other for all the years that we knew each other and worked together, as late as a couple of weeks ago at work, in the early 90s, we were at a job site, construction site, and of course, you know, construction sites don't have indoor plumbing or facilities. So John went to use a facility and came back and looked at me, and he said, I dropped my snips. And those of you that don't know what snips are, snips to cut wire. And I laughed, and we laughed about it, and he goes, well, they just fell on the floor. So he picked them up, put them back in his pouch, and he carried him, and we got a good laugh about it. And on the way home that day, it was probably an hour and a half drive. We're joking about it, and I had a little icy. Of course, you have kids at home. Had an icy that I'd bring to work, and I went to open the icy, and of course, opened it improperly, and the red icy went everywhere in his van. And all he did, as John normally would, is he reached down and grabbed the snips and just kind of handed them to me and said, you should have used these. And it's a story we never forget. I never forgot. Whenever I'd see him, I'd say, hey, John, you dropped your snips. And he would laugh, and he'd say, okay, bleeder boy. Because it looked like I had blood all over his van. John was a great friend to me. I love John. I am so very thankful that I was able to visit him Monday evening and sit with Lois and sit with Becky. I met Lee. It was an amazing time to be able to just sit with him and tell him that I loved him and that I would see him again. It's been a very difficult week for me personally, for his family, for our friends. But knowing that I will see him again in heaven, and we will be able to love each other and that smile and enjoy each other's presence, I am so grateful for. Thank you.
Who's next?
My name's Janine. I worked with John from 1992 to 2019, so I kind of watched him grow up, and I knew him before Becky did, and this is kind of my favorite story about him. We both started out working in a warehouse together, and he's the one that taught me how to pack boxes, so whenever somebody always compliments me on my box packing skills, I owe it all to John. So there you go, you taught me something. I remember he was young and dating, and like you do, and he would tell me these stories, and he's like, I take a girl out somewhere nice, I spend all this money, and it's just like one time, and it's just, I don't like it. I'm so tired of it. And I told him in all seriousness one day, even though this sounds kind of funny, that one day the right girl will come along, and she's not gonna care if you take her out to Taco Bell. She will just want to be with you, and that's what matters the most. And that is gonna be your girl. And then along came Becky. And it's true. I mean, it was heartbreaking for me to hear this, because they should have had 50 years together plus. And I told Becky before I went outside that, you know, in 25 years, Jenna and Sierra should have been paying for a cruise for you guys to go to the Bahamas and everything else. which, yeah, you're all, yeah, yes. No, yeah, but I know how proud he was of his family, and I too felt like a part of the family, watching everyone grow up and, you know, being there for Lois before, and my heart breaks for you. You've just had so much, but, you know, they're just such a strong family, and I know he definitely would not be happy having all of this attention, because he definitely was. He was a gentle giant, but he did have a great sense of humor. People just enjoyed being around him. He was truly a good person. He had a good heart. He had a big heart. He cared for so many. And I just, like, seriously, I mean, it really hurt when I heard the news. And just, having, I'm pretty sure I was at the Biltmore and met you that Christmas party. But, just the fact that he has a beautiful family that he was so proud of, and, especially Sarah and Jenna, you guys, the light of his life. And then you brought Baby into the picture, that he didn't really particularly want to go down that path, but like everyone who brings a pet home, the person who least wanted to be part of this turned out to be father to a dog now too. So too bad. Yeah, poor John being so outnumbered, and all the stories about at one point how he could never even use his own bathroom anymore, and just girl things everywhere. So, just the one thing to take away is when you love someone, there's always a piece of them in your heart. They're always with you. You will see them again. You just have to wait and be patient, but just remember, he's always in there with you. He's always going to be there. He's always going to be looking down. When you need him the most, just, remember that he is there for you. He's also thinking about you too. And he knows he'll see you again. And yeah, it's rough. It's very, very rough. I'm going to give you another hug.
Hi, I am Becky's little sister. And I've known Becky for years and years. And I remember I was so devastated when she moved to Tucson, because I was losing my big sister to Tucson. And it was the best thing for her. I remember when she met John, just the light in her that changed. And there's this story, I don't know if a lot of you know it, but when Becky was young, she had long, straight hair. And she got a perm. And then I believe it was chicken pox. And her hair stayed curly forever. And when John was praying for his wife, he was praying for somebody with curly hair. So God knew that Becky was meant for John. And so that was one of the stories that I always remember. And I always remember on one of their first dates, they went to a Toyota dealership and looked at RAV4s, and that was one of the cars that they ended up buying after they got married. And so those are just a couple stories, and I know how much he loved my sister and how much he loved his girls. And when I would come down and visit, I remember when I met my husband, I brought him down because he had to meet my sister. And they welcomed him into the house, and the girls were little and dancing around the house, and just the love that they had together. And those are just a couple things that I wanted to share.
Well, I'm Aunt Kay. John and Becky and the girls spent almost every Thanksgiving at our house. The picture that was up here before of the family was taken at the boulders at our house, so it was really touching to me. Sandy told me I had to come up here and represent the family. But what I would like to say is we loved John, Lois. We loved him so much. Good man, good to the girls, perfect for Becky. And I can see why now. You know, he was raised with all these beautiful women in his family. But earlier it was mentioned about John's jokes. And this is what I'm going to share with you. He and I both had a quirky thing going with jokes. But the one that was very famous in our household was, if you pull the wings off of a fly, what do you call him? You call him a walk. He and I cracked up on this joke every time, and nobody else laughed, so. But he was a lovely man. He'll be missed. But look how lucky you guys were. Look at how lucky we all were. I just want to say, God bless you, Becky, and God bless your beautiful family.
Someone else.
I really don't like crowds, so this is totally not me. John was a really great big brother. He played dolls with me. We purposely got a Ken doll so he would have a boy doll to play with me. And my mom made Cabbage Patch dolls, and he had to have a boy one. So, but I also played cars and race cars and Atari, and we just did great brother and sister things. And he taught me how to play softball with a baseball. That was a big thing in our house. I think the love of sports came from my time with my brother and Harvey Mason, Judd Bushler, Sean Elliott, Steve Kerr, Matt Mubach. 87 was great. But that was the year that I knew that John was a huge U of A fan, and it instilled it in all of us. The whole town of Tucson, it wasn't just us. And we all have something great to share. And that was my brother. So thank you all for being here.
Good afternoon, church. My name is Vince Adams. I used to work with John at Copper State Communications, a family company. I won't waste your time here. I just want to say to the family and everybody, I met John in July of '92. I can tell you stories, but most of them you won't get. But what I will say, a short little story, we used to have a dispatcher who couldn't tell us apart. I had a goatee then. It made sense. But I just want to say, we used to laugh about it. He's my brother from another mother, and there could be no other. He was a spiritual man, and we never talked about the work because the work was always work. But I always remember he was right by my side doing those jobs. And we used to work late at night, early in the morning. He used to come pick me up. Sometimes we'd drive jobs. I remember all the conversations we used to have. He was a spiritual person. We used to talk scripture. And I just want to say, knowing him, I could never be him technically. He always got me. But what I learned from him is how to be a better person. And I think what I took from him is what I see from you here, that you got most of it. John was a friend. He stood by you night and day. He was quiet like me. He was born the 24th of January. I was born the 20th. We were both Redskin fans, and we talked movies all day, comic book movies. But I just want to say to your family, Miss Becky and your family, I'm going to miss him. I don't live here, but I had to come, and I want to thank you. He was a friend to me. We got along great. We had good times and bad times. May God be with you, bless you, and keep you. He was a good man, and he touched everybody here. And it was just take that from him, that you look around, that's what he did. And we should take from that and be glad from it and be blessed by it. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hi, I'm Ruth, for those of you who don't know me, which is probably a lot of you. I actually came to know John through Lee, whom I used to work with back in the day when we were at the Cancer Center. So when I told him I was going to go back to work at Tucson Country Day School, he says, "Oh, you must know Becky." And I said, "Who's Becky?" He's Becky Hart, my best friend John's wife. And I said, okay. So I'm like, well, there's Miss Becky around here somewhere. And then one day, she was subbing for me, and I was like, I know who you are. And it was just so wonderful. And then she ended up teaching at the school and, full time. And we got to be friends. And one day I said, hey, you want to be on a bowling team with me? And she said yes. And then hence the Gutter Girls were born. And so, we've been bowling together for a few years, and we needed a permanent sub. Sierra actually bowled with us for a little while too, so that was really nice. Unfortunately, there was a little mishap there, but we were still looking for a permanent sub. And finally, I don't know how she did it, but she talked him into it. And she came in one day and said, John has agreed to be our permanent sub. And I thought, oh, that's great. And then someone said, well, we're going to have to change the name. And I thought, oh, but that was my name. And I thought, oh, and it was actually kind of funny. And then I don't know who settled on this or how we settled on it, but we decided to call ourselves the Gutter Girls +1. And so it was actually a really great thing. And it was so fun. I was so excited that John was going to be joining us. And he ended up having to sub for me for a few times. I had just lost my father last month. And so I was so glad that he got to bowl with the girls, and everybody really got the chance to know him, because all you had to do was look at Becky and know how much love there was in the family, and just love for life and love for everybody. So I'm sorry I didn't get to bowl with him, but I'm so glad I got to know him, and I'm so glad that I got to know you guys, and I love you so much. So thank you.
I just wanted to say, she's not her real sister, by the way. She's her spiritual sister. That's my daughter. We had Becky come on board with us. We were the Sunday school directors at the church. And she was like our right arm and our right leg. And the kids just loved her. And when she moved to here, I was like, man, we can't lose you. But I seen through the years all the things we kept in touch. And rah-rah, I got a chance to meet John's mom. And your girls are so beautiful. And it's been years since we've actually hung out. I'm sure there's a lot of you in here that have known them kind of through the years. And my heart breaks, because if there's anything we could do to hang with you in the days and weeks ahead, that you're going to be in our prayers. And I know the Lord is with you, and I pray God's comfort and his love be around you at this time, that you feel that. And all this love that's here. And I just wanted to extend that, the blessings of the Lord, that he's here. And you had a great brother. He was a really good man, and everything about him that everybody said was just, he was quiet. So when I would go visit, I just remember his smile. I remember his hugs. He was such a good hugger, and his love. And so I just wanted to share that one little bit and correct my daughter to say she's a spiritual daughter.
Anyone else? So my name is Steve Elise, and I first met John in second grade, I think right around second grade, and at church. So as far as friendships go, he's probably easily my oldest friend. So 40-ish years. So please bear with me, because this will be tough. And it'll be tough because of who he was and who he was to me. And I know that you understand that. And I'll speak louder for you. There aren't many things more difficult in life or a greater honor than sharing right now. Sharing with you today, not just my thoughts about John, but ways that I learned from John. And I think from the sounds of it, he taught many of us the same lessons. And for part of it, maybe speaking on behalf of him because of the things that I knew of him and how he felt about certain things. But he was my best man at my wedding. And there may have been friends that I had in life who I had longer conversations with or spent more time with. In college, there are certain relationships that you build with people that maybe would feel closer in some ways, but there was no question. John was the guy. He was the guy who was going to stand with me. And I knew that he would stand with me for life. My first memory of him in church, we may have been around each other more than that, but I remember him sitting to my left, and I was sitting in the middle, and some random guy who was a troublemaker was sitting to my right. And that was just that one Sunday that he came. But I remember this kid tried to tell us a joke that I know he didn't know at the time, but it was a dirty joke. And he didn't tell it right. And all of us were too young and too innocent to understand what he was trying to tell us. All the words were wrong, and his telling was wrong. And so we laughed really loud so that no one would know that he didn't know, I didn't know, and the guy who was telling it didn't know the joke. And we got in trouble. Melody, I saw you in here somewhere. Yeah. John. John can be a pretty intimidating guy when you're 8 years old. Hi, John. It's good to see you. But we got quiet. The troublemaker kid next to me may have cried a little bit. And John just smiled at me. And he put his hand up over his face, and he looked to me, and he said, "It'll be okay." And a lot of the pictures that we had out there, that's the John I remember. You could put him in any phase of life, and I remember that face and that smile. That was him to me. I was always about the same height as him, but I was the lanky, skinny thing that could blow over, and the limbs didn't work quite right. But as Lee said, he was the guy who was strong, and he was athletic, and he was great to have by my side. I've thought a lot, and I've talked a lot about this lately, but we hear that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. I mean, that's just one of those things. It's one of those sayings. We've heard it, and many times it's true. But with John, it really wasn't. He was a big guy, and he was as solid as a rock. He was quiet. He was a gentle giant. He was a teddy bear. He was all of the things that he looked. He was big. He was strong. That smile. As I said, he was quiet, but he wasn't quiet in a passive, sit-on-the-sideline kind of way. Lee mentioned he sat, he observed, he learned everything there was to observe about you, and he didn't forget it. We had conversations in elementary school that he brought up on my wedding day. So he was a student of life. He remembered the people. He remembered how we felt. He cared about how we were feeling. And I know that you know what I'm talking about, because when you were with him, you were noticed. He may not have said much, For a lot of us who were lucky to spend a lot of time with him, he had a lot to say. But one of the things that really caught me about him was that he waited to speak. He was quiet because he always waited for the right moment to say whatever he was going to say. A lot of times it was the joke, and I'm sure all of us feel like we had an inside joke with John that only him and us knew as individuals. That was the way he was. But sometimes it was correcting. I got corrected by John more than a few times. And he was one of the few people who could do it in those moments. This week, his daughters were even saying that as a dad, and I really admire this as a dad, he could hang out kind of stoically, maybe a little creepily, and stare at your friends and not say a word. Just get everybody off kilter a little bit and then drop the dad joke. It was him. He was an encourager. I have a memory of going to, I have no idea what it was, where it was, why we were there, but we were probably too young to be, I don't know, it was probably some church thing, I don't know, but we were at some kind of heavy metal concert, and
It was a church thing.
yeah, I don't know. And I wish I could put together the detail, but I can't right now. And it could have been Stryper. It might have been. And I remember we got up close, and I was watching the guitar player. And through the whole concert, I was talking straight into John's ear. And I'm a music guy, and I love music. And it was this moment that I realized that this guy on stage I could do anything he was doing. And I'm not like, inflating myself or whatever. But in that moment, I realized that I had learned all of the things that this guy who was up there in the spandex and the hair and the lights and all of that stuff, I could do that thing just like he could. And there was a pause in the concert, and he grabbed my face and he said, "Why are you wasting our time talking through a concert when you could be playing?" There was another time. My wife, Erin, is sitting over here. And when we first started dating, before we started dating, this thing was, I was really wrestling with this thing. And it is that I'm 6 years older. And that's fine now that we've been married for 23 years. But when she was 17 and I was in college, that was a little bit scary. And I was going to everybody to gut check me. And John said, "Get over yourself. It's the only thing. It's the right thing. Stop wasting your time." I'll scratch that one. We were both introverts in different ways. Being on a stage, it's a quiet thing. It's a somewhat lonely thing, and playing with bands and all of that. I'm playing with 4 or 5 people, and it doesn't matter what's happening out there. This is a space, and John related to that, and we had these conversations. He's playing sports, and basketball especially. And there were times in our life where he didn't have a problem. He didn't struggle with the things that a lot of kids struggle with, where it's too cool to ask for a thing of another kid of a certain age. And so we were early teens, and again at a church thing, and he said, he looked really upset. So it was not the happy John. It was the upset and very focused, and I don't know how to describe it. It looked like something really bad was going on. And he said he didn't feel like himself, and he wanted me to pray. And I said, "Well, what do you want me to pray?" And he said, "Pray that I don't let my team down. I don't feel quite right." And, even as a kid, it was like, he wasn't asking, "Dear God, let me score the most points. Let me have the flashiest passes. Let me wow them." Or it's not like there's a someone to impress or anything like that. It was, I don't want to let my team down. And years later, there was an event and I was playing, and he could tell I was kind of in a similar mode. I wasn't on my game that night. And he brought that back, I don't know, from our early, maybe 13, 14, something like that, to my early 20s. And he said, it's just you and the 4 other people, right? Just don't let them down. And he prayed pretty much exactly the same thing for me in that moment that I had for him. And years later, there was another time, and there was a lot going on in life, and I did not feel like getting on a stage. And there was a big room. And he was in that room, and he saw me, and he came over, and getting mic'd up and doing the stuff. And he asked how I was, and I said, I'm not feeling myself. And he's like, it's just you and the 4 or 5 other people. You've got this. And I'm going to pray the same thing. There was another time, and again, I wish I had more context for some of these memories, but it's been kind of a sleepless week. But it was his gentle correction that he could give me as a friend. And there was something, I can't remember what it was, but I was asked to teach something. And it was in front of people, a large number of people, maybe larger than this. And I wasn't ready. And basically the material they gave me, I got up and I just delivered it. I didn't really consider what I was saying. And afterwards, he came up to me and he said, I have a question because I don't think I understand what you were talking about. He says, does God belong to you or do you belong to God? He said, because it sounded like you were using God to push a point. Be careful. And you know how many times I have weighed whether I want to listen to someone's teaching with that voice in my head? And there's never been a time when I've taught or spoken after that when I haven't considered, am I using God to push my point rather than being used by him? And that kind of leads to a discussion of faith. And he was strong, as we've said. He was reserved most of the time. He was quiet unless he wasn't, but he was real, and his faith was that. We were talking about what this would be, just with the family. So, we weren't going to go a path and talking about God and faith that would be unlike what John was. And this talk would kind of reflect him. And I think everything that I saw in John as a person, just a physical guy, it really reflected what I knew of him as a quiet example of God in my life. My early 20s, my folks were out of town, and my mom's folks were here, and they had kind of been getting older and progressed to a kind of a care home. And I got a call, and I was the only one around. And the person on the phone said, everything's fine with your grandparents. They've just got the flu. And do school, do whatever you're doing, and just stop by the hospital, stop by TMC later on, and just say hi and check on them. And so I did. I waited, and at the end of the day, I went in and I went to the room they told me, and my grandmother was there. She wasn't responsive. And they told me that my grandfather had a heart attack, and he was in critical care in the other wing across TMC. And if you've walked the halls of TMC, that's a maze. And so I spent whatever time going back and forth between the two of them until my folks got back in town. And we used to have these things called pagers, about this size, and my pager went off, and I didn't know the number, and I called the number because we were young and trusting then. And so you would take a quarter and you would find a payphone. Aubrielle's here, my youngest daughter. You would go find a payphone, you put the quarter in, you call the number that you never saw before, and you would hope that somebody answered that you actually knew. And it was John, and he knew somehow. And he said, whatever you need, let's go hang out. And so I said, let's go shoot hoops. And so I got there, and he was there first. And it was one of the many times when he was the thing that was used by God, that he belonged to God. He was the hand of God in that moment, taking a burden off of his friend. And one of the things that it's easy to do when you have a friend who's a giver, especially a quiet giver, is to let yourself take advantage of that or take it for granted. And one of the things that I also saw in him, because I recognized in that moment that when you take those friends for granted in those moments, especially when they are doing those things that they are the hand of God, that you're taking God for granted too. So it's a lesson to pay attention as he would to the people around you and how they're being used. Another time, about 8 years ago, we moved up to Phoenix, and it was a big change for our family. We had, at this point, 3 kids, and was changing one job to another. It was a big shift. It's not that many miles, but those who've done it know. And I was working during the week up there and coming back down. Aaron was packing the house during the week, but I'd have weekends to kind of help out. And one of the things on my list was I was supposed to have someone come and move this stuff from the side of the house. It was a trash pile. It was a pack rat nest. It was cactus. It was a metal frame. It was all of these things that I didn't want to touch or deal with. And when the trucks were loaded and the kids were in the car and I did my last walkthrough, I got to the side of the house where the mess was, and I could see John at the end of the driveway. And he just started walking towards me, and he was like, "What's up?" And I explained, and he in summary, he said, it's my problem. It's not your problem now. And it wasn't so much the doing, but the seeing that got me, that he saw from across the way, and he could realize, or just by looking at me in the way that he did, that there was something a friend needed, and he was there in a heartbeat. And with the big shoulders, he carried a load. And again, it wasn't the doing, it was the seeing. I felt John's love in that moment, and that was the only way that in that moment I would have felt that I belonged to God and that it was going to be okay. It was because he noticed. He was consistently that person for me, and I know for many others. He was the best man from school to now. And I can't remember a major event in my life where quietly he wasn't there beside me. Becky, you know it. We all know it. He loved you. And he lived his life like he loved you. We lost a big part of John when he met you. And that was a good thing. 25 years. I know there are a lot of people in this room who can't say that. And it should have been 100. hate what happened to him because I know that there was so much more left in him for you. Jenna and Sierra, dads are not perfect. I try my best, and I know he did. But we screw up. Sometimes there are things we just don't know how to communicate, how to say to you, but man, we love you, and he loved you. I remember the first time that I saw him holding you. I remember the first time I saw him holding you. And that man lived for you. He wanted you to be happy. He wanted the best of health for you. He wanted you to feel loved, to feel protected. And I know he was a quiet man who may have struggled with words sometimes, and unless it was a movie quote or a dad joke. But you should never forget that you have a father who loved you and was so proud of you, and that you were precious to him. No matter what, no matter how good or how bad things were feeling in your life, your dad was proud of you. Your dad loved you so much. And your dad's love was the best kind. So when Lee and I made it down to Tucson, Lee and John in many ways were my brothers. And so many of my memories are with the two of them. Lee and I could be volatile with each other, and especially playing racquetball. But John was steady. In our last moments with John, I was thinking, John was the friend that years could go by and it felt like you were kids picking back up as soon as you sat next to each other. But this time was different. We had enough of him that he said he was sorry and he wished that he had more time, that we had more time together. And we didn't have that next time. What I left feeling was that we didn't have that next time to sit down and catch up. Time. So this week, I'm asking myself, and it's a great question to be asking now, who am I spending my time on? Who do I belong to? Who do I notice in my world that needs help in the way that he did? Because God, I wish we had more time with John, but he did it well. He spent his time and his life on his family. He was strength for a lot of people in this room who needed it. He belonged to God. He showed his love to people when they needed it. He will be missed and he will be remembered because that man was something special. So God, we thank you so much for the life that you gave to us in John Arndt. We thank you for the friendship and the example, for that giant, for that teddy bear, for the bad jokes, for the good ones, for the good lessons, the correction, for all of it. We thank you. And God, I ask for your comfort and your strength, especially for the family, and help us as his friends and extended family to know how to give and how to support his girls now that he's not here. We thank you and we praise you. Amen. So, in a few moments, we'll gather over there and share some refreshments and some time together. I ask that we have about 5 or 10 minutes to stick around here so that it can be put together. And just one final song from John, I guess, is something that he would want us to remember or to do. Bear down.